Good morning. Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the presence of Monterey Board Member Bruce Savintino. Good morning, sir, and welcome. Welcome to the second quarter 2018 inflation report. Our speakers for this morning session are the following. Monterey Board Chairman, BSP Governor Nestor A. Media Jr., Deputy Governor D.Y.C. Bruno for Monetary and Economic Sector, Assistant Governor Francisco Chita Pila for Monetary Policy Subsector, and Senior Director Senior Ronald R. Abinama of the Department of Economic Research. We will begin with opening remarks by the Governor, followed by the second quarter inflation report by Deputy Governor Tito Quintillo, and finally, the Senior Bank Loan Officer Survey by Sir Tima Villar.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning to everyone. Thank you for coming out and understanding the background. Welcome to the press conference on the BSP inflation report for the second quarter of 2018. Today, we wish to discuss with you the developments and the analysis that underpin the BSP's monetary policy decisions during the second quarter of the year. Our objective is to enable market participants and the general public to better understand the underlying developments as well as the reasons and analysis behind the BSP's policy action. We begin with the global economic development environment. The overall prospects for global output have improved since our last briefing in April, owing to faster rates of expansion in the key economies. In particular, economic activity in advanced economies has made further traction. Consequently, the unwinding of accommodative monetary policy in the US and other advanced economies will likely continue and drive capital flows away from emerging economies, including the Philippines. Meanwhile, global inflation remains elevated in the second quarter of 2018 amid geopolitical tensions between the United States and some key oil producers. Nevertheless, plans by major producers like Saudi Arabia and Russia to boost production, coupled with higher output coming from the US, could exert downward pressure on oil prices. In the Philippines, we continue to feel the weight of supply side pressures, as reflected in the uptick in the prices of certain food items and domestic petroleum products. Average headline inflation using the new 2012 based consumer price index series rose to 4.8% during the quarter, from 3.8% a quarter ago, bringing the year-to-date average inflation to 4.3%. This is higher than the upper end of the national government's target range of 2 to 4% for the year. Similarly, core inflation increased to 3.8% in Q2 2018, higher than the quarter and year-ago rates of 3% and 2.5% respectively. Moreover, inflation expectations of private sector economies also increased during the quarter, with analysts attributing their higher projections to volatile global oil prices, a weaker peso, and the transitory effects of recent tax measures on the prices of domestic goods and services. Meanwhile, domestic output expansion remains robust on account of the expansion in capital formation sector. Recent high-frequency sector indicators of economic activity also continue to point to firm growth prospects in the near term. The growth momentum was also supported by a strong and stable Philippine banking system. During the review quarter, banks' balance sheets exhibited strong growth in assets and deposits. Furthermore, asset quality indicators remain healthy, while capital adequacy ratios continue to be above international standards. Domestic liquidity also remains ample, driven by robust credit growth. However, amid the resilience, the Philippine economy is being tested by external headwinds, emanating from the recent and planned interest rate hike by the US Fed and growing trade tensions among the key economies. These are exerting depreciation pressures on the peso. The country's current account deficit and higher inflation also dampened investor sentiment during the quarter. These developments form the backdrop for the BSP's policy decisions during the second quarter of 2018. In brief, the BSP raised policy rates by 25 basis points in May and in June, bringing the overnight reverse purchase or RRP rate to 3.5% from 3% a quarter ago. The interest rates of the overnight lending and deposit facilities were likewise raised accordingly. In deciding to hike the policy rate during the quarter, the Monetary Board noted that the increase in inflation expectations and the risks of possible second-round effects argued for timely and decisive monetary policy action from the BSP. Although inflation expectations remain within target range for 2019, elevated expectations for 2018 highlighted the risk posed by sustained price pressures on future rates and price outcomes. Equally important, upside risks continue to dominate the inflation outlook, as various measures of core inflation continue to rise. Meanwhile, the BSP kept a close eye on developments in the foreign exchange market and noted their potential impact on inflation in the coming months. The BSP believes that its monetary policy actions during the quarter signal its strong commitment to safeguard macroeconomic stability in an environment of rising commodity prices and ongoing normalization of monetary policy in advanced economic nations. The BSP likewise reiterates its support for carefully coordinated efforts with other government agencies in implementing non-monetary measures to help mitigate the impact of supply-side factors on inflation and social welfare. Accordingly, the BSP will sustain its utmost vigilance. In particular, we are taking into account the potential price pressures of excessive volatility in the foreign exchange market. While we believe that our fundamentals remain solid and healthy, sustained pressures on the peso could adversely affect inflation expectations. Further, some demand-side pressure may also be already eating into inflation. All of this warrants a firm and timely monetary response. Therefore, let me say that the BSP is considering strong follow-through monetary adjustment at the next meeting of the Monetary Board in August. The pace and magnitude of policy tightening will necessarily be data dependent on our comprehensive and vigorous assessment of all relevant data and forecasts. This is consistent with our long-standing disciplined approach to inflation targeting. We stand by our primary mandate of promoting price stability, conducive to a balanced and Sustainable Growth of the economy. In a moment, we will provide you with a more detailed discussion of the factors behind the Monetary Board's recent decision and its assessment of private and output conditions. Also, we will have a brief discussion of the results of the PSP's latest quarterly loan officers survey. We look forward to your questions and at the end of these two presentations. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you, Governor. We will now proceed with the inflation report for the second quarter 2018.
Thank you very much, Alicia. On behalf of Governor Padilla and the MDM Tolentino, let me welcome you to the DSP and good morning. We propose to cover the developments on inflation in the following manner. One, we wish to cover the recent developments in the areas of inflation dynamics, domestic demand and supply, monetary and credit conditions, financial market movements, external trends, and the monetary policy actions of other central banks. B, we would like to see the inflation outlook review and contextualize what the PSP did in the second quarter of 2018. So that will be covered by the third portion, implications for monetary policy. And the key message of this presentation is that the recent monetary policy actions of the PSP, that means the 25 basis point increase in the policy rate in May, and another 25% hike in policy rate in June, continue to be appropriate. And there are three angles, three dimensions to this assertion. One, baseline inflation projection is higher, but it remains within target range over the policy horizon. And balance of risks is due to be upside. So the first 4 months of the year, we saw that inflation was driven by the supply side, and there were only incipient signs of the second effects, which became made more manifest in the second quarter of 2018. That warranted the response to the PSP with two policy rate hikes during the quarter. Second, inflation expectations have been shifting upwards, although the expectations remain within the target range for 2019. So 2018 is elevated, but 2019 we expect inflation to go back to target consistent path of between 2 to 4%. And finally, we see that domestic demand continues to be solid. So that would suggest sustained momentum of domestic demand, with the capacity of the economy to accommodate tightening of monetary policy. So the sum of this is that we remain vigilant and, as the governor emphasized, ready for follow-through action to ensure that the monetary policy stance continues to support and promote our price stability objective. So let me go through the outline. What have been the trends in inflation? But this chart will show that the second quarter 2018 inflation rose above the high end of the target range. You see the first line there, the headline inflation at 4.8% for the second quarter of 2018, up from the first quarter reading of 3.8%. What gave rise to this release? Food was the driver of the trend during this quarter, particularly vegetables and sugar, jam, honey, chocolate, and confectionery. They more than offset the decline for some items, including meat, fish, and milk. At the same time, we also noted the prices went up due to some tightness in domestic supply. Logistics was a problem from the perspective of the LFA during this period, and given the lower inventory levels in the second quarter of 2018. Non-food items also contributed to the upsurge in inflation, particularly higher prices for non-food groups on crude oil, as well as the result of the excise tax on petroleum products following the tax reform package 1, as well as the actual increase in rentals for housing and catering services. So these were the items under the non-food items that actually supported the upsurge in prices. The next chart will show that, again, based on the 2012 CPI, official core inflation and alternative measures show some increase. Now, we know that core inflation is a measure of the underlying demand. But we know that in the first quarter, the demand pressure was actually coming down. In the second quarter, there was a sharp increase, particularly in June of 2018. What did we notice during this period? We noticed that in terms of the number of items beyond the 4% upper end of the inflation target, there was an increase in the number from 48 to 61. So there was some broadening of the impact. But this is out of 200, more than 200 items. So it's just a broadening, but not yet a generalized increase in terms of prices beyond the 2 to 4% inflation rate. But in terms of the weight, there was also an increase. The right slide is that in the fourth quarter of 2017, in the first quarter of 2018, there was actually a decline in terms of the cumulative weight of the items whose inflation rate was actually beyond 4%. It was only in the second quarter that we saw a sharp increase in the cumulative weight of those items, okay, in the CPI rising from 3.3 to 46.8. So that really warranted a response from the monetary policy side. Now we're also mentioning about inflation expectations shaping up for 2018 and 2019. But there was a higher reading for both years. We know that in 2019, for both survey period of May and June of 2018, this is the chart to the right. You see a 3.7% reading, which is within the target of 2 to 4%. In 2018, there was a slight increase in the reading from 4.3 to 4.4%. What were the reasons that were given by the market respondents? Number one, they saw the higher volatile global oil prices. 2, weakening peso. The effects of trade. 4, higher government spending on infra. So this is the part of the demand pressure. Potential rise in wages. Normally, the Regional Productivity and Wage Board will receive petitions for higher wages. Adverse weather conditions impede on the supply side, and higher utility rates, which would normally follow increases in oil prices, and finally, rising global inflation, which could be transmitted to us through the trading sector. Now, what about domestic growth? Well, we have been saying that domestic growth fundamentals continue to be solid. And this is shown in these two charts. The left-hand chart shows GDP growing about 6% for the past 12 quarters, and the economy grew by 6.8% in the first quarter of 2018. Now, this growth rate was actually higher than the 6.5% in both Q1 and Q4 of 2017. The right-hand chart will show the support coming from household consumption, capital formation or investment, and of course, public spending, government spending on the expenditure side. And from the supply side, we see success in industry recording solid gains and continuing to drive economic growth during this period. The next chart will show, based on high frequency indicators, because the only data that's available to us is first quarter of 2018. So to have some idea of what we can expect in the second quarter of 2018. And the GDP, I think, is going to be announced by ESA on August 9th. We look at the high frequency indicators. And on the basis of these indicators, we see that we continue to see expansion, particularly in manufacturing. This is also indicated by the about 50% reading in the Purchasing Managers Index. Vehicle sales showed some decline. In 2017. And finally, the last chart on the right, the bottom chart will show that energy sales continue to be robust. So these are good indicators that economic activity in the Philippines continues to be robust. On the supply side, we see that the average spot price of Dubai crude oil actually showed an increase of 30% in the second quarter of 2018. Again, this is due to geopolitical risks, particularly those concerning Iran and Venezuela. There was a significant increase because of confluence of factors involving, number one, the tension between the U.S. and selected key oil producers, including Iran and Venezuela. Second, the declining oil production from the same country, Venezuela. And finally, further sanctions from the U.S. following the electoral results in late May of 2018. Now, this confluence of events actually supported the increase in global oil prices. Now, what is the outlook of demand and supply for oil? We expect, based on market assessments and numbers coming from particularly from the U.S. EIA, in 2018 there will be a slight excess of demand over supply, and this is being shown by the fact that oil prices have continued to be high at more than $72, $73 per barrel. But come 2019, supply will outstrip demand. So we expect that global oil prices, as shown by our assumption, will start showing some stabilization with a downward bias. So in the first half of 2018, we saw significant increases in the retail prices of derivative products for gasoline, for kerosene, diesel, and LPG prices, which would normally be stable, actually showed an increase of more than 80 centavos per kilo. Now, rice is another important component of the supply side. And here we show that as of the end of May 2018, rice inventory is expected to last for 90 days. This is a very comfortable level, actually beyond the previous month's inventory level of 2.2 million metric tons against the main level of 2.9 million metric tons. And that would include not only the NFA, and NFA has been receiving imports following the government arrangement in Vietnam and Thailand. We would also expect that so household, commercial, as well as NFA rice would account for that 90-day rice inventory. And already more and more NFA rice is being coming in, and they expect that by the end of July, full delivery and full delivery to the warehouses of NFA will be completed. So that should provide some additional comfort from the supply side. So we move on to monetary and credit conditions. In the latest number for the second quarter is May of 2018. For N3, the drop is 14.3%, which is slightly above trend. But if we were to look at those two charts, we see that it has been basically close to the trend since 2016, the second quarter of 2016. This is also true for lending by commercial banks. The May 2018 preliminary number for loans outstanding is about 19.4%. Again, this is very close to the trend since the third quarter of 2018. What could account for this very close movement between the trend and the growth of domestic liquidity and lending? Note that the BSP launched the interest rate policy system in May 2016, and that has provided us with market-based mapping up of excess liquidity from the market. However, while 14.3 and 19.4% are close to trend, the M3 and loans outstanding to GDP ratio continues to be modest, around 45-46% for loans outstanding and around 65% for M3. So these are actually, this is one of the lowest in the ASEAN region, like the one in Finally, in this segment, we see also the report on the latest report on the change in credit standards. Director Zeno will discuss this in details, but at this point, let me say that banks have broadly unchanged overall credit standards for the majority of respondent banks in the second quarter of 2015. This is based on the survey that we do every quarter of senior loan officers of the respondent banks. Just for the numbers, out of 28 respondents, for example, loans to enterprises, okay, 23 were unchanged, 4 tightening, and only 1 is the standard. For household loans, commercial real estate loans, and other housing loans, more respondents answered yes, they will not change the credit standards. They remained as they were in the first quarter. In the first quarter of 2018, there were more tightening than easing. I think the next chart will also show the same story. Now we move on to domestic financial market conditions, and here we see that they reflect external uncertainty. We have already mentioned that the U.S. Fed, geopolitical risks, also the tension coming from the trade, the so-called trade war between the U.S. and some of its trading partners. But the two charts below will show the spreads of selected ASEAN countries and the 5-year CDS spreads, both of which would indicate some increases in the spreads. That would reflect the greater uncertainty in the external market. This is not unique to the Philippines. The other emerging markets were also affected by the global uncertainty. And this is also reflected and felt in both the equities market, local equities market, and in the foreign exchange market in the two charts above. In global growth prospects, the next chart. Next chart. Actually strengthened based on the world economic outlook of the IMF, but there are still risks that remain skewed to the downside. We see that world output is at 3.9 for both 2018 and 2019, so there was no change from the Rio of January 2018 relative to the latest of April 2018. What about the manufacturing, the momentum in the growth, particularly on manufacturing? Well, at least this chart based on purchasing managers index would clearly show a faster pace of economic activity in manufacturing in June of 2015, because they all debate about because of new orders expanding and meet robust demand, and a low of 51% for China because of sustained rise in new business. Finally, most central banks kept their policy settings unchanged as of June of 2018. This is our monitoring of central bank actions for June, the latest of 2018. So how does the BSP see the inflation path over the policy horizon? The inflation is expected to settle above the high end of the target range in 2018. In June, during the June meeting, we announced a 4.5% inflation forecast, and in 2019, a 3.3% inflation forecast. This is subject to revision once we see the July numbers in August 5, and the other developments in the market from now until meeting of the board on August 9. I think this is the essence of the data dependent. Yeah. Now, what are the risks to inflation output? Well, they range in the upside. And among the upside factors would be the wage adjustment, additional wage adjustment, because some wage adjustment has been factored into a baseline scenario, baseline forecast of the BSP. So in case of additional wage adjustment, that would be a risk to the forecast. Second is the various conditions for electricity rate adjustment. Again, above what has been assumed in the baseline scenario. And third, faster than expected monetary policy normalization in the US. We expect two more for this year, and possibly a number of rate hikes in 2019. And then there are two downside factors. One, slower global economic growth due to some protectionism, and the second, replacement of quantitative restrictions with tariff and the regulation of rice importation. Earlier, I think both the government and the BSP have already provided ideas to the market on the extent of the impact of rice tariffification, which is about 0.2 for each quarter, the main quarter of 2018, and about 0.6 to 0.8 in 2019. So we would expect some of these litigants to provide some support to a more moderate inflation moving forward, such as the unconditional cash transfers to the poorest households. This is expected to moderate the demand for higher wages. Second, the subsidy for jeepney drivers for Antolid Pasada, as well as the modernization program for public utility vehicles. Now, this subsidy is expected to again moderate the demand for higher transport fare adjustment. Thirdly, the reform of the rice industry clarification, whose impact we have just discussed. And finally, DTI's monitoring of prices. The DTI goes around both the dry and wet markets to make sure that the price tag growth is observed by the marketplace. The inflation outlook is now shown in this pie chart. And again, let me emphasize that if we connect the solid lines with the bigger solid lines in the pie chart, we see that the inflation expectation is that it's going to be elevated in 2018, peaking at the peak between the third and the fourth quarter, and then going back to 2 to 4% inflation target for 2019. This is so different from what we had in 2008, when there was also some increases in prices and inflation, both in the second or third quarter of the year, but afterwards there was some normalization of inflation the following year. So how does the inflation outlook, given all of these inflation dynamics, affect the BSP's monetary policy stance? Now, during the quarter, the BSP raised its key policy rate twice in the second quarter. Once on May 10 by 25 basis points, and another 25 basis points increase on June 20. So the RRP rate now stands at 3.5%. So to summarize, the sum of information in the second quarter of 2018 suggests the appropriateness of recent monetary policy actions. Those two actions of the BSP. And in terms of the prospects, we expect the domestic demand to remain solid, and this would suggest that the economy as a whole will be able to sustain momentum given the adjustments in the policy interest rates. The economy is strong and solid. Of course, we have noted earlier some of the risks, and we identified some of those risks, particularly oil prices, additional adjustments probably in wages, transport fare, etc. These are all conditional on the official body or bodies in charge of those issues, particularly on wages and on transport fare adjustment. And as the governor indicated in his opening address, the BSP stands firm in its intent to take immediate and appropriate measures to ensure that the monetary policy stance continues to support the BSP's price stability objective. That will conclude our presentation on the inflation report for the second quarter of 2018. Thank you very much.
Thank you, PG Diba. We will now proceed with Sir Sino's report on the Senior Bank Loan Officer's Review.
Thank you. And good morning to our partners in the industry and in the media. So for the next 2 minutes, I will be providing some highlights on the results of the Senior Bank Loan Officer Survey for the second quarter of 2018, which will be the report of which we will be releasing this morning. So just to provide again a background on this survey, this survey is being done by BSP on a quarterly basis since 2009, and the respondents are the senior loan officers of commercial banks, both universal and commercial banks. It is aimed to to help us better understand the bank lending behavior of the Philippines, something that is important when we try to assess, for example, the transmission of the effectiveness of monetary policy adjustment. It's a two-part questionnaire. The first part refers to the lending of banks to enterprises, and this is accompanied by second part, lending of banks to households. Specifically, the survey asks questions on changes in the lending standards, credit standards by banks, their perception on the loan demand in the near term, as well as the different factors affecting the supply of and demand for credit. When appreciating the results of the survey, generally there are two ways to look at the results of the survey. One is to use the modal approach, where we look at where most of the responses are. Is it in terms of the majority saying that there's an easing, no change, or a tightening of their lending standards? And a complementary way of looking at the data would be to use a diffusion index. In a diffusion index approach, we compare the share or the percentage of banks saying that they have tightened their standards as against the share of banks that have indicated an easing of their standards. And the net number is what's called the diffusion index, and that also provides us an idea of where credit standards are over time. For this particular round of survey, we received 30 responses from banks. That's about 86, almost 86% response rate. So now let me proceed to some of the key results of the survey. First, we look at the overall credit standards, and using the model approach, that is where most of the answers will be by the respondents. They indicate that credit standards remain broadly unchanged for majority of banks in the second quarter of 2018. And this is true even if you look at the different types of loans, loans to businesses or enterprises, loans to households, loans for the purposes of commercial real estate business, or even housing loans. Most of the respondents would indicate that their lending to these sectors would have unchanged standards during the second quarter of 2018. And looking at the historical trend of this approach, we can see that for most of the period since 2009, the historical percentage shares of banks reporting unchanged credit standards were consistently above the 50% line across major loan categories since 2009, since the second quarter, particularly second quarter of 2009. So there was a change, consistently unchanged overall credit standards for majority of the respondents. Now, looking at some details, we employ, for example, the diffusion index approach. And here in this slide, we show a snapshot of the results of the diffusion index. Remember again, in the diffusion index, we compare the percentage of banks that reported tightening minus the percentage of banks that reported easing. So a positive diffusion index means that banks are tightening their credit standards, while the negative means they are easing their standards. And what are the results for the second quarter? There's a net tightening of credit standards for enterprises, households, and commercial real estate loans. But for housing, there was steady credit or unchanged credit standards for housing loans. The net tightening of credit standards for loans to businesses were attributed by respondents to perception of stricter financial system regulations, possible deterioration of the profile their borrowers. For the net tightening of standards for the commercial real estate loans, this is due to again perception of stricter financial system regulations. On the other hand, for the household loans, the credit standards that were tightened usually to respondents' banks reduced tolerance for this. For the housing loans, where credit standards remain unchanged, this reflects the unchanged tolerance of banks for this, as well as the steady profile of the housing loan borrowers. Now, into the next slide, we look at the outlook for credit standards, the review of credit standards for the quarter ahead, which refers to the third quarter of this year. And we can see that there is a net tightening of credit standards for loans to enterprises as well as commercial real estate loans. For households, there could be slight net easing for loans to households, and this is due mainly to the perceived improvement in the profitability and liquidity of this particular portfolio of banks. For the housing sector, there's unchanged overall credit standards for the third quarter. Again, we look at the historical trend of the credit standards using the diffusion index, and we can see that there's a decline in the diffusion index for loans to enterprises and loans to households. But for the most part, the loans to enterprises have been mostly on the tightening, slight tightening posture since 2016. And for loans to households, it's either unchanged or some slight tightening also during the same period. If you look at commercial real estate loans, this has been quite consistent for the past 5 to 6 years, where there is a generally net tightening of standards. For housing loans, for 2014 up to 2017 period, it's mostly again tightening, but the latest thing is that it's steady credit standards for these types of lending by banks. So that provides us an idea of the evolution, the changes in the credit standards employed by banks when lending to their clients for different types of loans. This survey also provides information on the perception of banks on the demand for loans. Again, we look at the demand for loans using foreclosures, modal, as well as the diffusion index. And the results for this quarter survey indicate that there's steady overall loan demand. And this is true across the different 4 major categories of loans that the survey goes for enterprises, households, commercial real estate, and housing. And for the most part, the view has been unchanged loan demand. And to the next slide provides the historical perspective of the perceived loan demand for the near term or the current quarter. And it has mostly been about 50% level. Now, employing the diffusion index, again, we can see there is a perceived net increase in demand for some types of loans. And for this survey in particular, we observed that banks indicated that they are seeing a net increase in demand across all types of loans for the second quarter of 2018. From Q3 2018, they also see a net increase in demand across all types of loans. In the next slide, we show the evolution of the loan demand indicator, particularly the diffusion index, and it has been indicative that there's a robust, perceived robust demand for loan across time, where the diffusion index, as you can see, has been mostly positive across all types of loan. So in summary, the results of the bank's loan officer survey for the second quarter of 2018 would show that using the modal approach, credit standards have been broadly unchanged for most of our respondent banks. If you look at the diffusion index, the overall credit standards for loans to enterprises, including commercial real estate loans, as well as loans to households, point to some net tightening, but the credit standards for housing loans were unchanged. On the loan demand, even as credit standards using the diffusion index has tightened, the reading of the respondents is that there's a stable growth for demand for loans, both for enterprises and households. And this is true whether we look at it via a modal approach or a diffusion index approach. So this concludes the summary of the results of the survey for the second quarter on single bank loan policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Tino. We will now open the floor to questions from our audience. Since we are live on social media, I would like to remind you to please state your name and your organization before asking your question.
Good morning, my name is Ian. Governor, your recent projections from the private sector said that the rate hike by August, and it might be 50 basis points. Could you react to that perception?
In the complicated, we'll be carefully evaluating the incoming data. And also as a consequence of that, we'll be doing our own forecast. For the next policy meeting, as I stated in my statement, the monetary board is considering strong monetary action to deal with persistent elevated inflation, as well as our concern on the volatility on exchange market, which could have an impact on inflationary expectations. So this is part of all the considerations that the monetary board still be looking at as part of our regular review. So these things are possible.
Thank you, Governor. Next question, please.
Good afternoon, Governor, sir. Just wondering, given all the factors that you said, some persistent supply side pressures, offshore developments, the tightening in the U.S., monetary policy tightening in the U.S. and other advanced economies, which, as you said, sort of has an impact on the currency, and more importantly, elevated price expectations. Is there a change in terms of when you see price increases peaking this year? Also wondering, because the Department of Finance this morning released an economic bulletin that had an inflation forecast for July 5.3, which again sort of indicates a slower month-on-month increase. So I'm wondering how you see inflation dynamics moving forward in the coming months, and whether you see already said about the pressure already. I guess that's it.
The basic view of the BSP is that people still see potential peaking of inflation along the third quarter of this year. But you also see that down the road, by 2019, we see inflation coming back target. This remains our view. But nonetheless, we are recognizing the risks to this outcomes, and that's why the BSP has been taking timely action in tackling on a tightening cycle since the last two policy meetings. And we will continue to stay vigilant and monitor closely the data in terms of the necessary follow-up action from these two initial actions that we have taken so far.
Thank you, Governor.
That's Lucas Miguel. Gentlemen, given that it looks like a zero-sum game between inflation and growth, is the central bank leadership prepared to accept blame for lower growth that will ensue with the tighter monetary policy going forward?
That's a complete question of aiming to say zero-sum game. Another way of looking at it is that we've shown you the evidence that growth prospects actually remain pretty strong. That's actually going to provide flexibility for the BSP to deal with the inflationary pressures that we have been going through. So, unlike in another context where the economy is weak or downtrending, that ties the hands of monetary authorities. This is not the case for the BSP. So, they can, the BSP, this remain focused on its primary mandate, which is price stability. At the same time, you always keep an eye on making sure that whatever we do is conducive to a balanced economy.
Thank you. Next question, please. Another question. Warren.
Regarding recent development over the United States, you mentioned that you expect the unwinding of how the policies will continue. However, there was some political color added to this recently with US President Donald Trump openly or publicly criticizing the Fed, saying that it did not like the rate hikes. What do you think this means for the policy environment over in the US?
I can tell, there is also uncertainty in U.S. policy, and this is one of the things that we need to carefully monitor. But the fact remains that the Fed has proceeded with its tightening plan. They have announced their future direction, and it remains to be seen whether these things will change. At the same time, the global economic environment itself is shifting. As you know, the world is starting to witness a potential escalation of the war, which would have implications on global growth prospects. This is new development that authorities such as the Fed will also have to factor in its decision. So it's by no means crystal clear the period ahead in terms of the time. But once we are over here in the Philippines, what we're dealing with is we're looking at the so far the direction of the Fed. Its consequences, for example, capital flows, which has had an impact directly on, for example, the peso. And at the same time, it's also true that the U.S. growth continues to be quite strong at this point in time.
Thank you, Governor. Are there any more questions?
Sir, just a follow-up about FX. Wondering what's your assessment of foreign exchange pass-through to inflation because in past months, I believe there have been announcements that FX pass-through has gone down. Has this assessment changed? I heard pretty strong statement today about the BSP taking a closer look at the FX market, specifically how FX volatility affects price use.
Based on studies in the past, the pass-through of changes in the exchange rate hasn't been diminishing. But again, we are also saying that the situation may be changing. And this is why we have been carefully monitoring the data and also reassessing our approach. So as you know, we are an inflation targeting framework. And a lot of the effectiveness of monetary policy rests on the flexibility of our ability to hit those inflation targets. Developments that may discomfort those or those expectations warrant a strong response from the BSP. And there are indications that the continuing exchange rate pressure seem to be affecting inflationary expectations. So we can't ignore this. That's why we are paying closer attention to this development.
Another question?
And then, how would you rate the receptiveness of the other policy-making units of government to the empirical data that we present, which may be action on their part that is beyond your ambit to recommend? In other words, do they listen to you?
I mean, we have a division of responsibilities. So each agency has their own accountability in terms of what they need to deliver. And as an economic team, we are each doing our roles, adapting this morning. For the BSP, our role is very clear. Our role is to make sure that there is price stability. If there will be impacts on our mandate, then we need to address those. And that's why I think an important part of our message is the continuing coordination that we do with other government agencies, for example, that may have an impact on our own state. But they're part of those.
Just follow up again on FX. Some analysts are forecasting a range of 53-55. I was wondering if is there a way to the BSP actually, do you see this as a concern if you make it that level or if you a certain level that contains that?
The BSP pursues market determined exchange rate policy. And this is totally consistent with our inflation targeting framework. The fundamentals suggest that the exchange rate ought to be relatively stable. I say relatively because market conditions are very big fluctuations around the range. And it's also a fact that today, at this year today, the peso has significantly depreciated already. If you look at the real effective exchange rate, the adjustment is consistent with the retention or the maintenance of the overall competitiveness of the peso. Now, the fact you cite numbers, I can't comment on those numbers because we don't target those. But again, I come back to what drives the BSP's policy action. If those kinds of numbers would unsettle our big inflationary expectations that affect our ability to hit target, then BSP will act.
Thank you, Governor. Are there any more questions? Okay. So if there are no more questions, we would like to thank everyone for your time and attention this morning. Please stay safe this rainy weekend. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much.
The next.